Hello there, welcome to another episode of the Showcase Africa. This is a show where we bring to you innovators, entrepreneurs, culture shapers, thought leaders to discuss the Project Africa. And we're excited because we want to change the narrative of Africa in terms of showcasing opportunity, initiative, and doings, right? And before we go, I'd like you to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us across all social media platforms. And today I'm excited because I have a very, very interesting person here, Phapano Phasha, right? I'm correct, yeah.
Oh, yes, of course.
Yeah, great to have you here. Well, thank you for coming through, and I hope we'll have a very interesting conversation. Can you just please give us a brief introduction about who you are and what you do? That will take it from there.
No, thank you so much. And let me just thank you for inviting me to your platform. I'm truly humbled.
Thank you.
As you indicated, my name is Phapano Phasha. I'm a communication strategist with over 20 years in the communication space. I do a lot of work in the private sector, in the public sector as well. And my key focus area, and I'm hoping that with time I'll be able to transcend. I mainly work with political actors, but I also work with what is called non-state actors. So what I also do is I primarily focus on countries in the global south, but also BRICS plus nation. So I use my company, of course, yes, as I said, I do have, this particular company, which is PM Phasha Consulting.
Yeah.
But I also run a think tank. And my key objective, or my main objective, is just to change perceptions about the continent and the global south, whilst making money at the same time, simultaneously.
Makes sense. Yeah. Yeah, it's good. So let's speak to the conversation we're having off camera the other time, which is branding in Africa, perception. So we need to dovetail first into perception of South Africans to the world, for example, perceptions of Nigerians to South Africa, Kenyans to South Africa, and we just have a whole lot of multivariate stuff, but mostly they're negative at times, most times. And it's because of maybe some of the bad experiences we've had with some members from these countries, then we tend to form our stereotype about the country entirely. I think the summation is our leaders are doing a poor job at branding at nation-state level. And by default, of course, Africa as a whole. What are your thoughts on that? Because I know that that's your passion point, and we have to speak to that extensively.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think one of the things that I've realized is that many Africans do not believe that they are brand ambassadors of their own respective countries.
Yeah.
And of course, they are also, brand ambassadors of the African continent.
Yes.
No one speaks ill or negatively about Africa than Africans themselves. So for me, I think that's where the conversation starts. So if you look at South Africa, I am South African, of course. If you look at our country, the South African populace is bound to speak so negatively about their country. And of course, I do understand that people would have challenges. And of course, there are challenges in relation to governance. But there's a lot of work. There's a lot of successes and achievements post-1994.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, the people themselves have, I can't say that it's a conscious decision, but I would say that the people themselves, I think they've not done, justice to brand SA.
Yeah.
And I also understand that in South Africa, we do not have a developmental media. And this, for me, is a narrative that President Thabo Mbeki used to, distinctly speak to when he was still president. Because what we're having now is that we have a media which, from morning till night, talks badly about the country. When you go out there. I don't even, watch TV anymore, because every time you put on your TV station, the first thing that you hear about is corruption. The other thing that you hear about is that we are the rape capital. You hear about crime, but at the same time, our politicians have fallen victim to the same narrative of not being able to brand the country. That's why it was not a surprise that when we went to Washington, when our delegation went to Washington to meet President Trump and his own delegation, we had, the very delegation from South Africa justifying that South Africa is crime-ridden, as if there's nothing else that the country offers. Of course, there's crime. Right? Crime statistics in South Africa are not as bad as any other country in the continent. And when you start to understand this dynamics, that it seems as if we are not confident about our ability to govern, but also our own confidence on taking the continent, post-colonialism and leading. And it's not only, in South Africa, the same as Nigeria. One of, off camera, what we were talking about, I have been trying so hard to engage with counterparts from Nigeria, with political heads, to say that Nigeria has a good story to tell. If you look at Nigerians continentally, what they are doing, their advances. If you look, for example, in our continent, in terms of fintech, what Nigerians have achieved, in terms of banking and other spaces, we don't hear about this great achievements and the successes. What we hear is that Nigerians are just nefarious. They're involved scammers. They are scammers. But what happens to the professionals, the academics, the business people, who are just breaking seals? In the US, you would know that Nigerians have overtaken African Americans as specialists, as doctors.
Of course.
You go to the UK, it's the same thing. Nigerians are taking over, but they're not taking over as drug dealers, as 419 scammers. They're taking over as professionals. But so that is the unfortunate story of Africa. That, as I think it was Chinua Achebe who said, the story of hunting will always be told from the perspective of the hunter. So from my business and what I seek to do is just to, retell the stories of Africa, be able to go out there and tell, as you are doing now, to be able to tell, this different narrative about our continent, that of course Africa has a great story to tell, that people can come and invest in our continent. But of course, there are still limitations and challenges. And, with your platform, and with other people. That collective
responsibility. So speaking to that, how do you exactly think we should navigate going forward? The leadership are not doing what should be done optimally. So for me, my central theory is that the responsibility falls on the laps of the business leaders. How do you think we can go about that? Or what are your thoughts? How do you think we can begin to change the narrative about African story, about what we are all about, our essence as humans? And what do you have? You're a strategist, so what are your thoughts around how do we go about it from here, 2025? Hopefully that if we do this prescription for the next 5 years, we're going to get somewhere better than we had at the moment.
It has been done before, actually. I mean, if you look at the idea of the Organization for African Unity, and you go, before that particular era, and I want to speak to, about South Africa in particular, and the African National Congress, the ANC. The fact that, the ANC was formed by men, who went out of the country, came back as professionals in the early 1900s, and they said that we cannot continue, living in this country in this current format. As Black people, we need to come together and we need to ensure that we are the change that we want to see.
Yeah.
And if you look at Ghana, if you look at Nigeria, if you look at all these other countries, as I said, which came together and embraced what we now call Pan-Africanism.
Yeah.
These are the founding fathers who were not reliant or waiting on any government or any politician to come and save them. So the biggest problem with Africa is that Africans are waiting for someone to come and save them. They're waiting for a Traore, Captain Traore, type of figure to come and save them. And they're waiting, of course, for any other politician who promises them that I'll get you jobs or I'll do that to come and change their conditions. And I think it's time that we start to recognize that there is no savior who's coming to save us. It is ourselves as business people, as professionals, who should come together and start talking about this change, which is urgent, by the way, because we're not catching up, and the world is progressing. We're not catching up. So the question is, what needs to be done? How soon we need to do this? Because as I said, we don't actually have time. We do have the resources, which is our human capacity. We have the know-how. It's time that we come together, put our brains, and we start saying, how do we chart a new frontier for Africa? So I think that's what needs to be done.
Okay, thank you. So let's go a bit more personal as to what you do. Can you walk us through what you do specifically, particularly? So I can see you have two client sets here, government and private. Can you lead us into what you do in your consulting firm?
Okay, I do public relations, a lot of public relations. I do a lot of branding. That's what I'm passionate about. I also do a lot of writing. I'm a writer, so I can just sit and write long essays. But I also consider myself,
without using ChatGPT, of course.
Of course. One of the things. The good thing about some of us is that we've been in the industry for such a long time that we cannot be, accused of plagiarism.
I get you.
But I've seen a couple of people, coming out now as writers, and you can always see that. It's someone who's assisting. So I'm more passionate about perception engineering. Changing how people think. But at the same time, as I said, writing, and now. Before, because I was a speechwriter, I still do speech writing, here and there for politicians. But now I've moved beyond just speech writing. I find it very, cumbersome and boring now. Because it's just taking notes about what's going to be said, and just I find it cumbersome now. So my other focus now is just speaking on the developments, as I said, in the global south. And BRICS plus countries. India. I'm excited with what's happening in India. The developments there, of course, there's a lot of inequality. But the fact that India was, at some point at a stage where Africa was. They were also colonized. I believe they attained their freedom in 1948 or so. And now their CEOs are leading the biggest fintech companies globally. They're leading in Silicon Valley. So for me, I'm looking at the developments outside of the continent. And what I do is I do my best to opine, and I try to localize them so that I can share this information with many of our people to say that, there are people who, were like us. Of course, it's well and good to speak about colonialism. It's well and good to speak about the West and imperialism. But people who were in the same space as we are, or as we were, they're moving ahead, they're not waiting. So I look at countries like China, of course, as well. And, for me, one of, what I also find interesting in all of this is that when I look at a country like China, when I look at India, I look at Japan, I also realize, and maybe perhaps it also speaks to what he's considered to be the father of modern China, Deng Xiaoping, when he said that it doesn't matter the color of the cat, as long as the cat knows how to catch the mouse. So what I'm also picking up, especially from Asian countries and advanced Asia, is that the question of colonialism is not an impediment, and neither is it an issue that is used to go out and compete in the world. They are competing, and they are diplomatic prowess at the same time. Because if you look at China, they've not been to any formidable wars in the past 40 years. They've been, industrializing scientifically. I mean, they've taken over the US. You look at South Korea, you look at Taiwan. So all these countries, we're no different to Africa. And all of these countries are not talking about colonialism. They're talking about how do we become superpowers? How do we compete with the global West? And many of them have taken, by the way, the global West. India has just overtaken Japan. There's projections that they're going to be overtaking Germany. So it's quite exciting when you start to observe what's happening outside. And for me, I think that's where my passion is actually at the moment. Because what I think we need as Africans is a total paradigm shift. Because we still trapped in this victimhood narrative. They're taking this, they're taking our jobs, they're taking our minerals. We've had these minerals for centuries. We've not been able to duplicate or to transcend them into wealth. But we do have human capacity. And we do have the greatest leverage, of course. It's young people. It's the African youth. We're not maximizing on our youth. We're not leveraging on these young people. We're not leveraging on the African diaspora. So for me, these are issues that I'm looking at, and I'm hoping that, with time, I'll be able to, expand. I'll be able to take my platform, to different areas, of course, outside of South Africa. But I've been doing some work here.
So I wanted you to speak to that in terms of, are you able to make inroad? Because I reckon that maybe for corporate, it might be a bit easy. Even trying to transcend corporate in different countries can be an Herculean task, right? But now talking to nations, how has it fared? Have you been able to penetrate? Just like you're saying that probably speaking to Nigeria, it's not. Do you get what I mean? Have you been able to have some progress here and there with some of these countries?
Well, some countries are quite interested in telling their own story. They are in the forefront. In fact, they're not waiting for anyone to opine about, the developments in their countries, what their countrymen are doing elsewhere and in their own countries. So I've seen, with countries in advanced Asia, there's not been a lot of impediment. The challenge is African countries, to be honest. But I think I do not tire. I do not say, okay, I don't listen to a person who says no to me. And of course, we've made some progress, especially with Nigeria, because I strongly believe that Nigeria and South Africa, if the two countries can work together, the sky is the limit.
But I don't seem to understand why there's that. We can't even call it love-hate because it's mostly hate, right, between the two countries in terms of, particularly from the government standpoint. I realized recently that South Africa is our third largest trading partner after China, or which other country again, that is South Africa. Now to get in can be a bit funny between both countries, almost like they're just this political tussle. Maybe some form of superiority context or what, but I believe also, just like you rightly opined, that I believe that particularly, anyway, collaborations amongst African countries will work, but I believe that we should play the big brother, South Africa, Nigeria, and even Kenya, and some other countries like, depending, do we count Egypt, because they tend to stay with MENA, which is Middle East and Africa, but if we're talking about Sub-Saharan, then the country that should play the lead in terms of diplomacy, in terms of being the big brother and navigating people in the right direction, will be Nigerian, South Africa, Kenya. Ghana is now even showing some form of fortitude, What do you speak to the issue around collaboration in Africa? That's from the government standpoint, then from the business standpoint, and individual standpoint. Bear in mind that there's a lot of animosity in between countries and even some form of distrust and lack of trust, really. Yeah.
No, thank you so much. My observation is that the poor and the working class between the two countries are not tolerant of each other, but business people engage each other. Hence, you find that there's a lot of South Africans who are doing business in Nigeria. And the majority of South Africans do not even understand why South African companies are going to Nigeria.
Yeah.
They do not even understand that, every business person or every company would want to leverage, Nigeria because of issues of scalability.
Yes.
So what you have is a micro and macro type of what I will say is analysis, because at a macro level where you find ordinary people, they engage from a competitive or competition perspective. But business people, Dangote has done business in South Africa.
Yeah.
Of course, you do not have as many Nigerian companies in South Africa. Of course, yes, there are a lot of red tapes and there's a lot of issues at Home Affairs. But at the same time, it also comes to this challenge of the nefarious, nefarious brothers who come here. But there's been and there continues to be a lot of collaboration between the two countries. Of course, it's not at the stage or where it should be. There could be a lot of work or a lot of synergy and collaboration between South Africans and Nigerians, especially South Africans. Seeing that in the context of South Africa, what we call the Black African majority, we do not control nor own the commanding heights of the economy.
Yes.
And many of our people don't even want to hear that. It's as if it's a swear word. When you tell people that in South Africa, we are primarily consumers. We are not, producers. It's white people who produce our food.
Yes.
They produce what we eat. They own the financial service sector. They own the banks and so forth. So when you start saying that, they will be like, okay, so what are they doing here? If they've got all these things, what are they doing here? Instead of learning, instead of pausing to say, if Nigerians have got all this or control all these industries with the limitations that are there, what is it that we can do as a Black majority to learn from our Nigerian brothers and sisters who are running the banks? I've seen the number of women who are running banks in Nigeria.
Yes, it's crazy nowadays.
You can't see this in South Africa. Many of us, are products of affirmative action. We have to go back in white companies. The ANC has to push these white private companies to employ us. So that's where we are as South Africa. And unfortunately, this conversation, you can't have this mature conversation of starting to say 31 years after democracy, how do we start having an African agenda? But of course, how do we then also have a South African agenda where we start recognizing and acknowledging that we are still consumers, we are still beggars in the land of our fathers? How do we look at Nigeria, as I said, with all its constraints, to say, okay, Nigeria has got the population, Nigeria has got the brains.
Yes.
Yeah. So how do we, work together with Nigerians? How do we work with Ghanaians?
Yes.
And of course, also accepting that these countries have always been our brother's keeper.
Yes.
That even in our darkest of times, these countries opened up, so that they can, welcome us. And the universities. I mean, we had Black academics, Black business people who went to these countries. So I think also for me, and I go to platforms and I'm prepared to be hated because I'm really not in the business of being liked. The reality is many Africans, South Africans, with our complexion, there's a level of self-hate.
Yes.
And of course, it's also compounded by our politicians because remember, all the political leaders, they operate within a border perspective.
Yes.
So it's Nigeria. It's, you've got all these 54 AU member countries.
Yes.
They would not want to open up the continent so that we work together.
Yes.
They need votes,
But how does that affect their votes? Maybe you can educate me. Because I'm just thinking, I think the problem really is that we just have pathologically selfish leader. I think that selfishness is just genetic. That's my conclusion, because it's all about live and let live. What we're just asking from the leaders is just the base of enabling environment. And that enabling environment should extend beyond your domain, which is Nigeria, should extend beyond South Africa. We should be able to interconnect. The prime example, of course, I will always use will be the EU. To say, let's open up.
Of course.
Let's consume what we produce from each country. Then, the whole idea of competitive advantage of nation. So we don't, at the end of the day, have to do everything. South Africa can focus on automobile and maybe the wine press. Nigeria focuses on this one focuses on that. Then we set up a situation where the 54 countries, the 54 markets are actually collapse, and we can serve each other. How difficult can that be from the standpoint of politics? For me, it's something that busts my mind, and I'm not able to understand why we're still here. Because at the end of the day, it's going to benefit those leaders in terms of tax, in terms of tariff, and all of that.
We won't need them. You must understand where politics.
Okay, I get your point.
We won't actually need them. So politicians leverage on scarcity. They leverage on victimhood. Yes. So that's why in many instances, the upper middle class and the elite want nothing to do with government because they become self-sufficient.
Yes.
You do not need politicians.
Makes a lot of sense. I get you.
All these country leaders, they are so heavily reliant on keeping us in these cages. So Africans, all the other countries, all these member states individually, the people are in their countries, they're obsessed about their own countries, they're fighting for this country, yet they own and control nothing, which is sad. And what happens is that the very leaders, their children, their families, they go outside of these countries. They come to South Africa, they go to Nigeria, they go to Europe, the US, and so forth, because they understand this very leaders, they understand this idea of universalism, the idea of being broad-minded, but they don't do the same for their population. So you must stay here and say, oh, let them leave. You must stay here and not want anything beyond, what you have. So they do not teach you how to hunt. They keep you where you are. So that's what's happening in Africa. So until, of course, yes, as you are saying, until we get visionary leadership, which might not happen in our lifetime, it means that we have to be the change that we want to see. So through our various companies, I believe that we really need to start working together, and teaching our people that you are not actually victims. Like, even in the context of South Africa, for example, I know that we're talking about business, but if you look at a country just recently, there were women who were stopped from accessing primary health care.
Yeah, I heard that.
And then you also had men who were patrolling some of the hospitals, and they were actually threatening some women and saying that, it's because you are sleeping with, Africans and so forth. So you can tell that this type of mentality.
That's so
ludicrous. Yes, but these are the poorest of the poor in many instances. But also, you then have politicians who leverage on neo-nationalism. No different to our Minister of Sports. Yes, he forgets that he's not only a minister in South Africa, but he has to represent our country outside of, outside of the country, in the continent and so forth. And what they have done so well is to make Africans the key problem. So whatever is wrong with South Africa, they then deviate and then they say that it's Africans. But the reality is that Africans or South Africans or Black South Africans, we do not own the means of production. So the problem is not those who control and own, which is the white minority. The problem is Africans. So that how do you really start dealing with the question of integration, with collaboration, when you've got ministers in government, in our own government, who are pursuing these ideals, this neo-nationalism, who are Zionists at the same time, who support Zionism and so on. They are there and they've got a bigger voice, because the other reality is that Africans are not putting resources towards this African idea of progress, of collaboration. We are not putting money. It's not like your Oppenheimer Foundation, for example, in South Africa, which has managed to co-opt the likes of General Obasanjo and many former leaders within the continent. And what happens is that they're able, to have a step inside many of these countries like Zambia, where they are also able to dictate and fund elections, Nigeria as well, where you find that, the aluminium industry, the can industry of Nigeria is owned by a white South African company. So because we are not forward thinking, because we do not fund our own, struggle, everyone else, is funding us. And whatever happens, and that's why I'm saying that if you look at the continent itself, we hate each other more than we despise those who do not look like us.
You see, so that is speaking to what I've seen. And it's okay. I've just discovered how we were able to get there. It's through subtle propaganda where you have been turned against each other.
Of course.
But the people that are beneficiaries are like staying somewhere and they're happy that you guys are not smart enough to know that they are trying to divide us. Because what brings us together is way than what should divide us naturally. In fact, most of these things that we're talking about division are actually inconsequential things that doesn't matter. You get what I'm trying to say? And I think that at the end of the day, I think the summation from your end is the fact that, we just need to step up at that. We the business leaders and sophisticated people haven't read widely, explored widely. We need to understand that we now understand the gimmicks that the government are playing at that extreme and trying to use the bottom of the pyramid to make sure that there's turbulence in the water. So at the end of the day, it makes sense. So they still hold on to power and still go the same way they want it to be, not the way it's supposed to. Now, we draw close to the end, and I'm just trying to ask, let's just piggyback from that and say, to your industry, what are the opportunities that you see for entrepreneurs? Let's say I'm in comms now, but I do digital marketing, I do IT, but you are a PR person and co. What do you think are the emerging opportunities within your comms industry in South Africa and generally in Africa?
Oh, I think there are a multitude of opportunities. Especially, as you said, from a public relations perspective, because there's always a narrative to engineer. There are always political parties, for example, from my line of work that would contest. There are always politicians who want to be branded. So there are many opportunities. Of course, it depends on in which industry. But I think what is key is being able, and at all given instances, if you are able to look at the needs which are there. I mean, we also have many people who want to be quite popular. I mean, people always ask me, do you have an Instagram account? I say yes, but I've never posted anything, because the people who pay for my services are not even on Instagram.
Yeah.
Yes, I do not need to be on Instagram.
Yeah.
You know, the multi-millionaires who do not actually need Instagram are not on Instagram.
Yeah.
So I don't have to say anything because that's not my kingish area. So I think what's important for all the people who are in marketing, I mean, Nigeria, for me, rebranding Nigeria, I mean, I was talking to my sister here, rebranding Nigeria is one of the catalytic projects that I think should happen in our lifetime.
Yeah.
Because the country has a good story to tell. The country has an opportunity as well to distance itself from this nefarious few Nigerians who are selling the country short.
Yeah.
South Africa has a great story to tell. It also has an opportunity to start telling the world what it has offered. You know, a great financial systems, a great Chapter 9 institutions, the social net, net security that has been created by our government. I always say that, and I do not care who says what. There's no country that has the infrastructure like South Africa.
Of course, definitely. So this is Europe in Africa, effectively, anyway. So,
so our country has a great story to tell.
Yeah.
And also, there's opportunities of leading, this project of patriotic Africans. I think for me, that's one project that needs to be spearheaded. Because as I said, we are our own worst enemy in terms of what we say about,
the narrative.
So I think also the opportunities are there. And we need to start using, our own money. Because, of course, you can engage, governments and so forth. At times, they don't pick up your calls. At times, yes, they do. But for the sake of our country, for the sake of our continent, our children and, our grandchildren, I think that it's about time that we start putting our heads together, start putting the money on the table and say that it's time for a new discussion and a new debate about Africa. Because Africa is not that, debt-ridden, war-torn country anymore. Africa has its own children. I mean, look at us, and you look at our fathers, and you look at those who came before us. So what stops us, from reframing and, telling this, great stories about our continent?
Thank you so much, PP. It's been a very, very interesting perspective. And this is about the first time we'll go extensively on, the political dimensions to this form of change that we want. And I think it's been very extensive. I believe that there will be a sequel to this in the nearest future. But I really, really want to appreciate you. I appreciate your perspective. Thank you for coming through. I believe, and the drawing close to this is, for me, I think the takeout will be that, and I'm happy because it seems my theory has not turned out to be correct, is to say individuals must begin to take leadership, will begin to take up, that responsibility to define the narrative and to put it in the direction it's supposed to go. And private sector would have to, as a matter of fact, lead this conversation. And I'm happy that we're drawing to that conclusion. And I'm so grateful. I'm so super excited. And I believe that this is going to be an ongoing conversation. And we hope to have you very soon on Showcase Africa. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you. Guys, thank you. This has been another interesting edition of Showcase Africa. And what we're trying to do here is to bring thought leaders, experts, industry stakeholders, innovators, thought leaders, culture shapers to the table, and we have this discussion about the Project Africa, showcasing the opportunities, notwithstanding the challenges. Guys, I want you to follow us across all social media platforms as we take this narrative to every country in Africa and beyond. I'll see you on another one. Thanks and God bless. Take care. Bye.